Hi, welcome to the Crafts channel. My name's Corinne Brad and today I want to show you how to make this star quilt block. And you can put this together with a tree block, of which I've done another demonstration, to make a quilt like this. I'm trying to show you, I don't really know how to show you this, but this is perfect as perhaps a baby's first Christmas quilt. It's in nice bright traditional colours and it's very easy to make. The one thing I will just say with the star block is when you come to cut your diagonals, remember to cut them all in the same way. I've made this block here, and as you can see, it is an asymmetric star, but you've got short points and you've got long points. When I did the preparation for this, I forgot which way I cut my diagonals. So I've got some blocks here that I've made up in advance, and as you can see, my short and long points are the opposite way round. It's not a problem as long as you make sure in every block your points are the right way. For the block you will need 4 squares of background fabric, and these are 9 centimetres square. They form your 4 corner pieces. You need 2 squares of one star colour and 2 squares of another star colour, and these are 5 centimetre squares and they form what we call the Battenberg block in the middle. And then you've got the slightly complicated bit, because each of these centerpieces is made from some rectangles of background and star colour. And these rectangles are 5.5 centimetres by 10 centimetres. So you need one rectangle of one star colour, one rectangle of another star colour, and 2 rectangles, because you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 halves of background. And then for the shorter parts of the star, you just need your normal half square triangles, and these are 5.5 centimetres square. I will put a template in the description below and some measurements, so if you haven't caught what I've said, you don't have to worry too much. And then also, just to fill in the spaces, you need 4 5 centimetre squares of background. So I'm going to pull up my chair and I'm going to start by making the half square triangles. If you've watched any of our quilting videos before, very simply take your background colour, take your star colour, draw a diagonal line on the back of the star colour pieces, move your needle slightly over by about 1 millimetre, and then line up your drawn line to your normal seam allowance area. And all it does is it just cuts your seam allowance down slightly, but it means that when you cut these in half, they should come down to 5 centimetres. Turn it round and repeat on the other side of the drawn line. If you ever watch me sewing and you wonder why I'm so cack-handed on a machine, it's because I am trying to keep my hands out of the way, and because I'm left-handed, my left hand is normally my dominant hand, and it always gets in the way of the camera. So they're your 2 half square triangle sets. And if you just cut along that drawn line, and finger press the seam, I'd say to the background colour side. And then what you want to do is you want to do, I don't know what they're called, are they called half square rectangles? But essentially it's a rectangle that's got a diagonal line down the centre, and it's not made in exactly the same way as a half square triangle, because if you were to just place it one on top of the other and sew down that line, what would happen when you cut it in half and then folded it open, you'd actually end up with a kite shape, which is not what you want. So what you need to do is you need to tilt it so that your diagonal line goes from opposite corners on the other side, so that when you stitch it and cut it in half and open it up, you've got a rectangle. Now I've cut these, and on the pattern I've made these deliberately about 5mm bigger than they really need to be, to make sure that you can sew these easily and you can trim them down. The other thing, as I mentioned, I've made my sample set up in the different orientation to this, because if you turn this over, you will see that my half square triangle here, I've drawn the diagonal the wrong way round to the one that I'd done in the original sample. But it doesn't matter as long as you either go top right to bottom left or top left to bottom right on all of your pieces. And I'll show you how easy it is just to make these rectangles. And as I say, I've cut these deliberately large, and I'll show you why in a sec. Because normally if you sew two things together, you stagger it to make sure that when your seam allowance is taken into account, you've still got your corners lining up. But in a shape like this, you can't stagger it in both directions at the same time. So what you need to do is when you cut it, these need to come down to 9 centimetres by 5 centimetres. 9 centimetres because that's the size of your square, 5 centimetres because half of 9 is 4.5, add a 5mm seam allowance. So these are now 10 centimetres by 5 centimetres. But what it means is you can cut them down now to 9 centimetres. And you do that by just trimming off a little bit on each end. So that the points of where you've joined it together actually meet on the corners. And that makes it a lot easier to sew them together. I'm not going to trim that one down. I am going to just sew this one very quickly. So instead of having it like this, you need to move your points around in an anti-clockwise fashion in this case. If you'd sewn your diagonal the other way, you'd move it in a clockwise fashion. So, what you need then is, if we start with this one here, you need a long triangle of one background colour. So your long triangle needs to go on the outside, and your short triangle needs to go on the outside, like so, with the background in the middle, and then it's filled in with another background square. Once I've done one of these, I'll know what I'm doing with the other one. First of all, you sew your now 5 centimetre half square triangle to your plain 5 centimetre square of background colour. Finger press away from where your main seams are, and then join it together. Now, this is a little bit tricky because your angles are different. Normally when you sew together two half square triangles, you can see where to sew them because the angles are exactly the same angle. But this one is a 45-degree angle, and this one is probably nearer a 30-degree angle. So your best bet is to trust in the size of your square. So this is just slightly over 9. And this one is 9. So I'm actually going to start, no I'm not, I am going to start at the top. When I line these up, rather than lining up the bottoms exactly, I'm just going to give that a little bit of leeway there, a bit of an overlap, a bit of an overlap there, and I think if I sew 5mm in, it should join those points up. That's not too far off. With a bit of heavy pressing and manipulation, you won't notice that they're not perfect. So that is one piece. Actually, let's pop it there because then that makes sense. I've already done the opposite number to that. And I've done the opposite number here. All I've got to do now is sew my other two pieces together, other three pieces together in the same way. Let's fold that out. So that is my final star point bit. And then I'm just going to sew my Battenberg together. There's two, switch one round, and just match up your seams in the middle there, and pop a pin in them. So that square 2 should come down to 9 centimetres. Slightly over, that'll do. And then that pops in the middle like so, to make your star. So then all I need to do is stitch a square panel to the end of each of these, which I'll do now. So I've sewn the top and the bottom strips together, and then I'm just going to sew the centre panel together, and just take a bit of care to line up your middle seams like you would normally. Pop a pin in them. When you put your fabric in the machine, don't line it up with where your needle is. Put your fabric so you've got about 7 or 8 millimetres behind the needle, if not a centimetre, so that your feed dogs have actually got something to grip onto. Go forward a stitch, go backwards a couple of stitches, and then start sewing. Because what that will do is the feed dogs can move the fabric properly, your needle can make a hole in the fabric properly, so when you go back over the hole you've already made, your needle, especially if it's a blunt needle, doesn't push your fabric into your feed and frustrate you and cause you to take it out and unpick it. Lecture over. I'm not saying I don't make mistakes when I'm not being filmed, but as you can see, I've got my machine at a 45-degree angle to me. It's not an ideal sewing position. So you've got your top strip, your middle strip, your bottom strip, and then all you need to do is sew them together, again matching up your seams as best as you can. And there you have it. Just finger press that out. And as I say, as usual, give it all a good press. But there is your completed star block, albeit not the same. It's a mirror image really of this star block. And when you trim it down, this should come down to about 26 centimetres square, which is about 8 inches with a seam allowance. It's 25, but with a press, it will give you your seam allowance. And the beauty of a block like this, if you're going to combine it with other blocks, like the tree block I did earlier, you can put sashing in between the two pieces, so that even if there is a discrepancy in the size of your blocks, by the time you put it together, no one will notice. So I hope you enjoyed that demonstration. As I say, please subscribe because we've got new videos coming up every week. We've got a lot of Christmas videos as part of our Christmas craft along that we're doing, so it'd be great to see you for more of them. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you soon. If you've been inspired to create, please share your